Okay.
Okay, so it's a new recording. So good morning, Barbara. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you, Ron. And how are you this morning?
I'm doing good. And today we've got a very interesting topic because we've got a journey on debt. And today the topic is pay yourself first before you pay debt. So the question I would like for you to answer for me is with the two books you've written, Yes, Yes, You and Winter Warrior. The one key thing I took out of there is understanding self. So if we can go into a deep dive of understanding self first, which makes a big difference on paying yourself first before you're paying debt, because you have to understand self first. So if you can maybe go and tell us more about understanding self, Barbara.
Absolutely, Ron, and 100%. That is always and should always be the starting point. The book, Yes, Yes, You, talks about 10 stepping stones, in this case, 10 tools to help us understand ourselves. The book Winter Warrior, The Eight Dimensions of Life, goes deeper, very much deeper, into what I call the eight dimensions of life, the internal, intrinsic dimensions that drive us, feed us, fuel us. You know, Ron, the world is so full of negativity. Bad person, not good enough, not encouraging, did something wrong. If we do not understand ourselves, if we cannot trust, develop, and grow ourselves, we don't have a chance in this world of negative harshness. It has to come from inside, and that inside takes work. Why? One, we're not taught it, but two, very, very sadly, we are so badly conditioned by the world around us, by the people in our lives, our schooling, our government, our church. We are bigger and better than what we are led to believe. Keeping us small, Ron, is an easy tactic for pulling us by the nose to do whatever it is that somebody or somebody else's want from us. If we do not grow ourselves as human beings, standing steady and firm on our two strong feet for what we will stand for and what we will not stand for, we don't have much of a chance of surviving the bullying of the world.
And Barbara, you touched on something quite interesting is uh, as we learned the habits from your parents, we learn the habits from the schools, we learn the habits from the churches, we learn the habits from government because nobody has taught us in financial literacy on money matters. And if you look at schooling, I haven't found a school or university that tells people how to manage debt. Each one talks about budgeting and what you're supposed to do and how to save. But nobody tells you about debt because all of this becomes habits because we adapt the habits from our parents. And by adapting those habits, we adapt it to ourselves and we pass it on to our kids. And hopefully, this episode, what we're doing is to change that mindset and break through those barriers of negative habits. Because if you're not going to take care of yourself, how can you take care of your family? If you're going to make debt the first person you're going to pay, your family's going to go hungry. So the first thing what I say is change your habits and change your mindset. By changing your habits and mindset and say, okay, you missed the bank, you missed the retail store, you missed the loan. You're the stupid one and gave me the money. You're going to stand in a queue. So I want to tell you a story, which is a real story. We've not seen this actual letter. And this is quite interesting. And the person's name is Sipho. And I won't mention the company's name. So Sipho gets this wonderful window envelope and it's red in his postbox. And Sipho was so tired of debt. So what he had is he's got his old bowling hat in the middle of the table. And what he done, he took all his envelopes he gets and he throws it in this hat. So any birthday cards he will read first, or anything that's written, he will read first. But the window envelopes, he will leave in the hat. So anyway, what he done is he will take his pay slip, take his bank account, and see who he can pay first. So anyway, he works out how much he can pay to his creditors. Then he closes his eyes and he puts his hand in the hat and pulls out an envelope. And today he will pay Bank A and Retail C, and so he carries on. Until he got this nasty letter from an attorney. If you do not pay, we will take legal action against you. So Sipho wrote back and he tells a story. I go to my postbox, I get the money, I get the envelopes, I throw it in my hat, I close my eyes, look at my budget, draw one out, and that's who I'm gonna pay today. It says, because you are harassing me, you think you're better than me, and he writes this whole scenario. Therefore, I'm penalizing you for the next 3 months of not being paid. So, so this is a story of life. And he wrote this to a retailer, and I've got it on my computer, which I'll share on a later stage. But this is what paying yourself is about. Make sure that you've got food on the table. Make sure you've got stuff. And if people want to harass you, you cannot go to jail for debt. And at the end of the day, pay who you can pay. And be the Sipho and say to them, you can stay in line if you want to threaten me. So that is one of the things is why you have to change your money habits and mindset.
So, Ron, just on that note, actually, paying yourself first isn't about being selfish. It is about financial responsibility for whatever amount that you have available to pay, and that you logistically pay a small amount across how many creditors that you have is way better. One, for self-esteem, and two, for the creditor. The creditor needs to know. You have to communicate with the creditor. What is your situation and how you best see it? The creditor too needs to be looked after, but only after you have looked after yourself and your morale and the food on the family table. Because a dead body pays nobody. But if we have a happy family and a fed family, we have a better chance of paying the creditor. And credit these days is way too easy. This is not about how many debtors a creditor has. This is not about this amazing book of monies owing to the creditor. This is about human life. The number of accounts the creditors have is not the priority here. It is about the responsibility too of the creditor for the ability of the debtor, because if the debtor has not got the capacity, or the agreement between the creditor and the debtor is not completely clear, based on circumstances of credit and payment of that credit, there is a fault in the agreement. And we have to learn not only about the fact that we need to pay ourselves first, but also that we have a commitment to the creditor based on an agreement. And when we understand the agreement between the two parties, we have a better chance of managing the debt, of securing ourselves as human beings, fed, looked after with the mentality of willingness, so that the creditor has a better chance of payment.
And Barbara, 100%. And let's just look on what debts do you have to pay first. And the first one is, I'll call them consumers. Every person who earns a salary has got a number of consumers he has to pay for. And the first consumer is food, lights and water, then the roof over your head, and then your transport. Everything behind after that is immaterial. You need to have transport to get to work. You need to have a roof over your head. You need food to eat. As soon as you start taking care of that and you start taking care of the family, you've got a better relationship with your kids and your wife. And this is, I've seen it so many times, how many breakups are there because of debt? Because there's one key ingredient that people don't do as husband and wife, and that's communicating about finances. A woman will say, I'm going to I'm going to the shops, and she will buy a pair of shoes that she can't afford because she loves retail shopping, because it's one way of removing the debt stress. And the husband will say, I'm only going to go for one beer. Yeah, right. It's not my fault. My friend wanted to buy me another beer, and the barman's going to buy me a beer because he wants to listen to my sob stories. You have to start creating that communication with your kids and your family and sitting down with them and say, this is what your budget is. This is what we're going to spend. What do you want? Yes, I want a pair of tackies. Okay, let's budget for the tackies. So if you got a debt and you've got school clothes, don't wait for January. Start planning in February the year before for the January. And this is how you can start putting stuff together. And we'll go in a deeper dive in one of the episodes, how to split up your paycheck into different scenarios. So if you start paying yourself first, it starts with one thing, and that is discipline. Discipline, mindset, communication. And in your book, it speaks about journaling. And journaling is one of the key things where you can sit with those 10 stepping stones. And let's just go in a bit of a deeper dive with journaling. Why? Yeah, you can pay yourself first by using journaling going forward, Barbara.
Oh, you know, Ron, journaling is such an amazing tool. As simple as it is, the magic in journaling, Ron, is that you engage with yourself. You engage in the awareness of what's happening within yourself. You engage with the written word on the paper. You get to see what's written on the paper. You get to see what the subconscious mind is doing in the conscious mind because it lands on the paper. We have to understand the power of seeing our inner self. Journaling, I probably have done journaling for about 40 years. I can't tell you when I even started. Writing has been an important part of my life. Journaling is a place of sacredness. I sit in the mornings, I call it my yacht process. Yellow velvet armchair, hot tea, first thing in the morning with my journal. And I sit in the comfort and in the sunrise and in the softness and in the quiet of the start of a day to find out, who am I today in this question? Who am I showing up as today? What is it that I need to attend to today? So it is like a softening, cleansing, opening, surrendering version of self that lands on the journal pages that you get nowhere else in the world. Even a best friend doesn't give you the depth of what journaling gives you. Journaling is my best friend because journaling is true to me, and I can write there everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly in the journal. Because when we get to see it, Ron, oh my word, we get to change it if it doesn't work for us.
No,
By the way, and we get to congratulate ourselves as well, because we also see the wins.
and 100%, Barbara, because that leads me to the next point, which wealth is built through consistent financial decisions and not on occasional big paydays. So the point I'm putting across there is you have to be consistent in what you're doing on a daily basis. It's, as I say to a lot of people, the pubs and takeaways are full at the end of the month, but they will spend on friends instead of spending on self, because they want to fit in. But you can fit in and you can have a takeaway every weekend. You can go out every weekend. It's the decision of your roadmap that you're going to put forward is how you're going to plan your paycheck. Because the problem comes in, we get so influenced by friends. Oh, are we going to go for a beer tonight? It's payday. Yeah, I think it's your round. No, it's your round. After 2 or 3 beers, the money is gone. And that's the sad part. But if you say, okay, I'm going to take 100 Rand or $10 or whatever it is, and just have it in your wallet, you know what your spend is. Because that is exactly the same with going to the casino. And the reason I'm going to touch on this is I've seen it so many times with people. And I want to tell you a story. Is we had a a client, and that we had to go see them at work. So my partner worked with the husband, and I worked with the wife. And I looked and I said, listen, I don't think they're over indebted. My partner said, no, I think they are. I says, what do you mean? Because he looked at the husband's bank statement, I look at the wife's bank statement, and they used the bank statement and they used their credit cards in the casino. So they chased up in 1 month, and their basic income was, I think, together was 14,000 Rand. And they chased up debt of over 150,000 Rand in 1 month by swapping their credit card under the floor limit. Loan companies were paid out, and they used that money to think they can double it in the casino because they were looking for easy solution because we're tired of debt, and they got hooked into the casino. And if you go onto YouTube searches, gambling is the top searches in South Africa, which is quite scary. It's not a solution. The solution is understand your mindset of habits, the decisions that you're going to make in yourself, and the decision that you can make with your family. What emergency fund have you put aside if a car breaks down? What emergency is going to be there if you got that flat tire? What emergency have you got for that payment if your child breaks his arm? Do you want to go to a government hospital, or do you want to stick to the private hospitals? You know, you have to have that emergency fund, but it all comes back to communication by paying yourself first. As I said, pay your debts, put the money aside for that emergency. If the credit provider starts harassing you, just put them in the hat and wait for the 3 or 4 months later to pay them. But don't worry about your credit score. That's the other problem. Yeah, but my credit score will be bad. Well, do you want your credit score to look good and your kids haven't got food to go to school? The choice is yours. Do you want to live with the Joneses? Or do you want to suffer and have an unhappy marriage, an unhappy child? At the end of the day, you have to make that conscious decision, do that journaling, pay yourself first, stuff the debt. And I don't worry if the credit providers are listening to this. I says they are the stupid ones. Here's a question. If you look at the latest quarterly report of the crediting monitoring report from the National Credit Regulator, there's about 28 million people who's on the credit bureau, of which nearly 11 million are listed. The sad part is school leavers, university students, pensioners, all credit providers as well. But what they don't tell you, 71 or 70 to 80% of consumers are spending their money on debt before they pay food. The other part is the average consumer sits with 11 accounts, not families, a family household, consumer. Sits between 7 to 11 accounts. If you look at it, the two-part husband and wife married, you're looking at nearly 20 accounts, between 16 and 20 accounts. So this is very important to start paying yourself first. Imagine the courts. I mean, I know that some debt collecting companies can't even make it because they can't retrieve money from the debtors because they're working at risk, because there's too much debt. You look at electricity going up, you look at interest rates going up, you're looking at the war. Start taking control of self and start building a discipline and start teaching your kids on financial literacy, not what your parents taught you. Change your mindset. And you can teach us on that of what you've gone, what people has gone through, of coming through that different mindsets, Barbara.
Absolutely. So, Ron, this too, like everything in life, from making a salad to managing our debt, is a creative process. And it is a creative process that we can take pride in. It's a creative process that we can prioritize in, therefore take discipline in, therefore be accountable in. A creative process that is visual. It is something that I write up every time I find myself in a situation where something different has to happen. Something has to be conscious. Something has to be aware. I draw up a circle. I cut it up into 4 sections, and it is a beginning, it's a middle, and it's an end. It is the process of going through what we can start with, what we can plan, what we can actually do, and what we can actually celebrate, because that too is important in understanding that we are part of a world, global, universal, evolutional life force energy. When we get to play, when we get to see, when we get to make choices for ourselves, as hard as it appears logically, as hard as it appears from the creditor's perspective, when we start to do and take charge, we can create the energy, the fun, the tick the boxes as we are achieving. Every small payment to the creditor is a win because it's one less payment to the creditor. or 16 or 20, as you just mentioned. So when we understand that debt too is a life force energy, and we take charge of it and we take responsibility for it. And you know, the word responsibility, Ron, is not a bad word. It means having the ability to respond, having the capacity to think, to action, to agree, to tick the boxes, the ability to respond to the red envelope with the window in it. How do we respond is what's important. Small amount is way better than a zero amount, and a small amount is a win, and a small amount is in the right direction.
And Barbara, I just want to go on to those small amounts. And there is a way you can become debt free without going seeing a debt counselor and so on. And one of the ways you can do it is applying the snowball effect. And the snowball effect is if you look at rolling down a small snowball and it goes down a hill, that snow will start accumulating and it becomes a big ball. Now, the roadmap is not clear and dry, but it's an idea what you can do. So you start with the smallest account, pay that off. Pay what you can on the other accounts. As soon as you pay the smaller one off, you take that installment and you put to the next smallest one. And then you start to the next one. And through this, and you put your timeline in your journal, and you can see you can become debt free. It might take 6 months, it might take a year, it might take 5 years. That is the one part. The second part is sometimes it might not be the smallest account. Sometimes it might be an account which is an average account with a high interest. Rather kill the interest. Or an account could be prescribed, and we can go through all of that on later stage. But just start with something like the snowball effect and sit with your family and communicate with your family by applying that snowball effect. You'll find that life without risk is life half lived, and you have to take that risk. And my slogan is there is life after death. So you have to take care of and take that bull by the horns. Because think about it. Rich people don't care about debt. That's why they pay themselves first. Poor people are so worried about their name, so worried about that telephone call. Just answer it. They've just got a job to do. And on that note, Barbara, we can talk about how to deal with a debt collector next week if they phone you. And how to work with those red envelopes. And we'll put that forward and tell people how to work with a debt collector. And it's going to be quite interesting because we can change mindsets. And I've done that because I've been there and I worked at debt collecting. I've been a debt collector, had my own debt collecting practice. I had my own micro lending practice, been in debt counseling, and even being in debt. So I completed the circle, and therefore I can speak about experience. So, Barbara, we on the half an hour, give us 2 minutes what a person can do by changing their mindset.
It's the beginning, it's the middle, and it's the end. Without a changed mindset, we can't move forward. The thing here, Ron, is we are so in our conditioning. We are so entrenched in fear and the bullying. We can't therefore think for ourselves. Often we need to just be with self. That's all. Move to a trusted human being. Ask questions. Journal. Work through it. Face it. Take the ability, the capacity, the values that you have about life and focus them on this question about debt. Debt happens for everybody. One or another. Life is a wave of ups and downs. We have done debt in our lives before and before and before. And now we get to face it again. So what? So what? It is the life task that we now need to address. If you can't do it on your own, talk to people. If you can't do it on your own, read. If you can't do it on your own, get some education. Take care of self so that the brain can be creative, can support you in this life task that you're facing just now, and manage it. Manage it. If you manage it, if you can see it, manage it, do it, acknowledge it, tick the boxes, be proud of you will move. Those shoulders that you hunch up, that tight stomach that you feel can be released because you are doing something in the right direction.
Thanks, Barbara. And I just want to leave the viewers on this. Proverbs 22:7 says, don't be a slave to the creditor. I say, become the creditor, and the way you become a creditor is to pay yourself first, because there is life after debt.